America's war with Iran, not just selected, I think it was intended from the United States perspective to be this real easy thing, U.S. and Israel against Iran. We'd like to keep it nice and tidy and simple. Iran blew that out of the water right away by expanding it throughout the region. And then now many others are starting to spread it out even further. Not clear exactly who it is, but there's a number of other states that seem to be getting involved. Other states have been attacked by drones. Again, we're not clear who it came from, but there's also some expansion in some of the allies of Iran. And we have been wondering what was going to happen from the Chinese and from the Russians, who both have motivation and interest in not seeing Iran fall. And today we want to look at some of these, some of the expanded implications of this war and what may happen next. And then we're also going to look at the claims for justification within the United States and where this may go. And to help us identify a lot of the fact from fiction and the BS from the, well, I don't know, they may only be BS, I don't know. And that is Matthew Hof, former USMC captain, combat veteran, former State Department official, and just an incredible guy who's currently with the associate director of the Eisenhower Media Network. Matt, welcome back as always.
Hey, Danny, good to see you.
Well, listen, I mean, I see a smile on your face because you already know where this one's going to go, because it's in kind of some bizarro territory. And by the way, folks, just stick around to the end, especially because we have a new prize that we're going to give today. If the FIFA can give their peace prize to President Trump, we have a prize of our own. I don't want to be a spoiler alert on that, but it's coming.
But give a warning, Danny, like, take an extra dose of the blood pressure medication, take another hit of your antidepressant, open that bottle, whatever you need to do to make it through this episode.
Whatever you need, man.
Whatever you need, yeah.
But make it through.
Make it through.
That's a good point. It's a good public service announcement. I appreciate that. Let's start off, though, with Russia, because so far we haven't seen any overt military action from Russia. A lot of people wondered if that would come. I think you and I may have discussed in the past that was unlikely, that they're going to get into a war with the United States because they're prioritizing their war with Ukraine. The last thing they want to do is get into anybody else's war, but they do have real motivation not to lose Iran for many reasons. They've suffered the loss of a lot of their I don't know if you could call them satellites, but certainly allies in Syria and in Venezuela, as significant curtailed there. So losing Iran is even more important, though, because of the Shahed drones and some other things that they've been getting, not to mention BRICS. But so Sergei Lavrov came out, though, and made this statement earlier today.
We'll continue to maintain dialogue with these countries, and we'll do our best to create an atmosphere that will make this operation impossible.
So he was not specific there, but the fact that he came out and Sergei Lavrov is not one bent to empty rhetoric that has no meaning. Do you have any sense for what the Russians may do that would make it, quote, impossible for for Iran to lose?
You know, as you said, Danny, they're not going to send some type of expeditionary force to Iran to support them. You know, military confrontations is simply not possible and not wanted and not desired. Certainly, the Russians can help with intelligence. My understanding, sort of people have seen this, that what Russia has learned fighting Ukraine and fighting the Americans by proxy, they have shared with the Iranians. Enhancements to the Shahed drones that the Russians have, built into their versions. They have shared with the Iranians, and that may help explain why you see so many Shahed drones getting through, and why the Pentagon yesterday came out preemptively and said these drones are a problem. You know, they're difficult to shoot down. They're going to get through. You know, preemptively covering their ass for future successful Iranian drone strikes. So I think there are those types of practical levels of support. There's also, of course, just the morale, the diplomatic, and the political. But I see the greater support coming from China and what China is able to do in terms of leverage with the U.S. Rather than Russia.
Now, I have heard from a separate source that says they have some connection with the Russian side, and they say that they've been helping them out with lots of advisors on the ground inside of Tehran, and I actually don't know where they are, somewhere inside of Iran. And one of the things they said is that they're sharing a lot of their lessons learned
Right.
with how to intercept American missiles, JDAMs especially, some of the other long-range missiles, and to give them clues on to how to get their drones through the American defenses. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Now, how quickly can the Iranians absorb that knowledge and put it into use? Right. I mean, anyone familiar with these types of things will know that you just can't tell someone something and then poof, it's all throughout their forces, right? That it's been employed broadly and thoroughly. So even say if the Russians started providing assistance to the Iranians in this capacity in the last couple of years, well, how well integrated is that into the Russian force? So, say with the JDAMs, the ability of the Russians, of course, to jam those, to not receive their GPS link, and the bombs don't hit where they're supposed to go. Certainly the technical aspects of that, the equipment that you need to do such things, the Russians could have provided to the Iranians. But how well integrated is that into the Iranian defense system, now? Right. I mean, so there's questions about how widespread their support could be, but certainly, yeah, the idea that they are helping the Iranians, as I said before about the Shahed drones, providing, enhancements or upgrades to them, as well as what, and this has been a concern for the Americans all throughout the Ukraine war. This is why we don't give the Ukrainians our best equipment. This is why when we sent, was it 48 Abrams tanks or 24, whatever the number was, we basically rebuilt these tanks so that they had a different set of armor on them. I mean, you could explain this better than I can. So that when these tanks were destroyed or captured or got in the hands of the Russians, they wouldn't understand, the top secret metallurgy of our tank armor. I mean, that's why we haven't given them more Abrams tanks. The United States Marine Corps gave up all its Abrams tanks in the last several years. We've got 300 or so Abrams tanks, M1A2, most advanced version of the tanks, sitting in Barstow, probably. Why didn't we give those to the Ukrainians? Because we didn't want those tanks to fall into the hands of the Russians, and then by extension, the Iranians, the Chinese, whoever. And that applies across the board. Why did we not give them ATACMS missiles until we had the PRISM missile in our inventory? Because we wanted to give them what was out of date, what we thought we weren't going to use or weren't going to need, again, because we don't want Russia to learn how our stuff operates. And that goes as well just beyond the technical capabilities of the weapon and how the weapon actually functions, but how it's employed, right? And all that back end that goes into. And so I think some of this, certainly not taking anything away from the Iranians, but the Iranian understanding of going after the American command and control systems throughout the Gulf, right? Hitting all those radar systems and satellite links and everything else. I mean, yeah, that's pretty obvious to do. But how much of that was influenced by the Iranians watching how the Ukrainians by proxy fight as the Americans, and how much they learn from the Russians? So I think this is all very well founded that the Russians are supporting in this way.
Now, in addition to any direct support that may come from Russia to Iran, because they want to hold their regional ally, I guess, up, there are some additional benefits which Russia could have. The Washington Post was talking about some this very day. Gary, if you could put that second full screen up there. Russia sees chance it may benefit from the war itself. And according to the article here, for Russia, the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, was the latest in a blow to President Vladimir Putin's network of anti-Western partners, and it exposes Moscow's diminishing influence on the world stage from the Middle East to Latin America. Yet, amid the dismay over Russia's inability to challenge President Trump's global reach, there is the hope in the Kremlin that the United States is becoming ensnared in a prolonged Middle East campaign would work in Moscow's favor, above all in its war on Ukraine, Putin's top priority. Now, what do you think about the process there and the idea that Russia could be only too happy for this war to continue to drag out?
Yeah, wouldn't you be? I mean, just in the sense of just for the very base and simple sense, right? Of they can't send stuff to Ukraine when they have to use it themselves, So as we're firing off all our missile defense interceptors, all our air defense missiles, right, burning through Patriot rounds, those rounds aren't going to then go to the Ukrainians. I mean, just extrapolate that throughout all the weapon systems that we have, all the munitions that we have, the logistics support. I mean, the American support to Ukraine has, bottomed out, but that's only kind of when you're doing it by the accounting financially. The Europeans are paying for it, and we're giving it to them. And so it doesn't matter
and by
how
the way,
much.
I'm sorry if I could interrupt for just a second. Gary, if you could put that video you were just showing up, that's important enough. You were talking about, we'll have now less air defense interceptors to send elsewhere. But this is according to this video here, this is the Bahrain. That's where an American naval base is. And you see 2 shots coming in, only 2. And you don't see any air defense missiles going up at all. Both of them strike their targets. This implies that our air defense is not that great. And why do I not see any kind, especially after we've already been hit before, and we don't even see an attempt at an interception? What do you make of that? That seems troubling by itself.
Yeah, well, first, let me get off my chest, which I'm sure you share as well, the nonsense we are subjected to over the last day or two about how Iranian ballistic missile attacks are down 86%, drone attacks are down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just the same type of vibe that we had, all throughout the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia's running out of missiles, right? I mean, here we are with the same nonsense. And for whatever reason, who even knows if those numbers were accurate or not. But, here we see the Gulf states taking a pounding today. Qatar, the Emiratis, Bahrain, explosions in Saudi Arabia. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of drones and missiles being fired at these countries. And as you guys are noting, where's the air defense? And the broad assumption that we have that we can work on with some degree of certainty, because we have access to what the inventory, we have an understanding of what the American inventory of these missiles were, as well as, more importantly, the procurement rates, which we have a certainty on, because that's all public information. We can get a good sense of how much is available. Larry Johnson, our friend, just had a good post on this a day or two ago. Right.
Yeah,
he did the math on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, rather than dealing with that certainty, we're subjected to this. Oh, look at the success so far. They're down again, 86% less ballistic missiles. And now we see Bahrain's only refinery up in flames occurring.
And by the way, just kind of as an aside here, we have Ted Postal on at 2 p.m. today. Who is going to give us an update on the no kidding what's really going on with this. So we're really excited to have that. But anyway,
I'll say this, Danny. If you got to do stuff this afternoon and you only have time to listen to me or listen to Ted Postal, I'm sure Danny or Gary doesn't want to hear this. Listen to Ted Postal rather than me. That's how.
I think they're equal. I don't think it's one or the other, but yeah,
but anyway,
it's that big of a deal.
But the Bahrain refinery we're talking about, that's 5 kilometers from the Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters. Not some port where we've got a couple of ships tied up alongside. The entire naval headquarters for the Middle East is focused there, is headquarters there. And the Iranians just dropped 2 ballistic missiles without any attempted interference or defense on top of Bahrain's only refinery. I mean, so the CEO there at the commanding officer there at the 5th Fleet, he literally could hear this and see this. So here we are on day 6 and all of this. I want to get back though, because I do have a story to what you said about with the Russians in terms of looking at this and thinking, isn't this a great thing that the Americans have jumped into this quicksand here? And I have a friend of mine who was in China in 2010 or 2011, and he visited with Chinese foreign ministry folks, and he would ask them, what would you, from your perspective, what would you like to see the United States do? And, not all, but a lot of them said back to him, we want to see the United States continue to be mired in endless wars in the Middle East. That's what Chinese foreign ministry folks were saying in 2010, 2011. They more or less got it. You can extrapolate all of the things that have occurred with our country Since then, the drag, the burden that the global war on terror was, our occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan, all types of things, and so same thing. So whether it is the acute or the proximate for the Russians of like, hey, look, this means less support to Ukraine because they have to use it in the Middle East to fight Iran, or in the longer term of, look, the Americans are bogged down. They're not going to be able to focus on anything other than this. This will consume them just as the Iraq war and the Afghan war did. And it'll also be a long-term drag, a long-term burden, a long-term cost that will further weaken them, that will further hollow out their economy, further hollow out their society, further put them in debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, let alone destroy whatever type of credibility this country has around the world, which, just saying that, there's really not much in saying that anyway.
Not much left. Listen, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there. That shouldn't be earth-breaking news that both China and Russia would love to see us get bogged down in these wars. And because it physically dissipates our inventories of missiles that we would need if we ever get into a big war. It's also dispersing our focus and not paying attention to some of the bigger peer-on-peer wars that we could fight, and instead looking at some of the smaller things here. But it just continues. It drains our nation of a lot of its money that it could be doing other stuff with. Just on top of that, now, if people were listening to you, that's not news. And anyone who would listen to you, or almost any sane person, they would come to that conclusion. But Matt, I'm just this is just out. I just saw this today. Actually, my wife flagged this for me. When you're trying to figure out why they're making these kinds of unforced errors like this war here, which was entirely predictable, and this is not from The Onion. This is not made up. This is literal news out today. I'm sorry, this is from June 25, but this shows that this is something that's being passed around today. These are some of the top of people that we put as members of the Homeland Security Advisor Council. These are the people that President Trump listens to. That is astounding to me that we're taking that. This is the kind of people, and I mean, we could go down the list of a lot of others that are in the current environment right now. We're going to show you some here in a second, but I mean, what does that tell you? And what can we draw from the implications of that about who President Trump is even listening to and making decisions like we're seeing play out right in front of us?
Well, I mean, this is worse, I think, than what we've seen in the past, right? So if you look at who surrounded George W. Bush, advising him how to handle things after 9/11, it was, essentially the entire gang that were a part of the Project for a New American Century, and that were looking for the opportunity to carry out regime change throughout the Middle East, right? As well as those who put in place or promulgated the clean break strategy of ensuring Israel's dominance, and then we end up with Iraq. Same could be said for Barack Obama with Afghanistan. When Barack Obama is trying to figure out what to do with Afghanistan, those around him are only providing him with the information and the recommendations to escalate the war. And Barack Obama says about the Afghan war, what should we do? He's given 3 options by the Pentagon, and it's small, medium, and large escalation, right? And the small escalation, as you know, wasn't even considered wasn't that small. It was like 40,000 people they wanted put in there. So, I mean, this is even worse, though, because what you're dealing with here are a cast of crackpots, a cast of people who aren't even loyal to institutions. I mean, say what you will about either the neoconservatives or the liberal interventionists that surrounded Bush and Obama. At least they represented institutions, and there was a legacy behind them and an organization of thought and argument that could be understood. In this case, Trump has surrounded himself by people who have no, well, first of all, their own personal principles are not there. We have no real hold on what these people believe in. What are their anchors? What are their foundations? Lewandowski, Giuliani. I mean, come on, And then they also have no institutional loyalty. And then we even see with the Pentagon, where you have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, someone who was pulled off retirement. None of the sycophantic generals and admirals that walked through the Pentagon, none of them were good enough, loyal enough for the Trump administration. So they pulled Kane off of retirement. And why do they do that? Because supposedly one time when Donald Trump met General Kane had his uniform on and was wearing a MAGA hat. You know what I mean? So like, who are these people? Right? I mean, like, I think your question is really, really important, in a sense that the one thing that balances that, I think, different from say, particularly a Bush who refused to change, right? Even when they lose the 2006 midterms and Iraq is the question in the 06 midterms, that's the referendum. He fires Rumsfeld, but he puts Gates in there, and then he escalates, surges in Iraq. I mean, so at least with Trump, though, I will say there is the chance that he changes his mind. I mean, as we're talking right now, Danny, he could be typing away a truth justice post or whatever he does, right? And saying like, it's over, we won, et cetera. Like we re-obliterated the nuclear program. They better not do it again, and it's over. So at least with Donald Trump, there is that possibility of him changing his mind.
Yeah, that's right? A pro and a con at the same time, by the way.
Exactly. Both things can be true. Yes, both things.
Yeah. Well, let's continue on here. I don't want to lose you before we get some important things covered here. Not the least of which is our award at the end. Don't miss that. Let's take a look. Let's stick with Russia here before we go on to the United States here, because there are some other things going on, the benefits that could come to Russia from us. We just talked about some of the things specifically about military related issues, but there's also economic issues. Let me show you. This is the price of oil that I pulled off just right before we came on the air here. And you can see from the time that the war started on the 28th of February until now, you see that that we have seen a 14% rise. So it's not spiking up, and you see it's kind of going through the typical peaks and valleys, but it's on a definite trend going up. So it's up nearly 15% since this war started, and as long as that Strait of Hormuz stays shut down, this number is almost certainly going to continue going up. And then we have Trump. You talk about him, something on Truth Social. I mean, when he saw those numbers, I think it was just yesterday, maybe the day before, he says, hey, you know what? I know would be a cool thing. Let's send the U.S. Navy into the Strait of Hormuz to escort the tankers out so that there's no problem here. I'm guessing you see a potential problem with that.
Yeah. And I apologize for, being glib and laughing. I know this is very serious and people are really suffering. But I think I'm just so exasperated and punch drunk with it all, right? Just the stupidity, one thing after another, the ineptitude, and this idea that we're going to send the U.S. Navy to escort these tankers. First of all, he's also saying that the United States would underwrite the cost of the insurance, so that if any of these ships were hit, the American taxpayer would pay for it. I don't think most Americans are okay with that. To make sure that other nations like Korea get their gas or get their oil, we're going to assure.
Yeah. And by the way, China is one of the biggest benefactors of that too. So I guess this is one case where they're going, good on you.
China gets about 45% of its oil from the Persian Gulf. And just to put the numbers out there so people understand how much we're talking about here, about 20% of the world's total oil goes through there, about a third of its seaborne oil, about 20% of its liquid natural gas, and about 15% of refined petroleum products go through. I mean, this is massive. This is not anything that you can dismiss. I mean, so for the Chinese to lose, I think it comes out to 11 million barrels a day or something like that. Where are they going to get that from? And of course, oil is a global market, so we will feel that here. But this idea that, the United States is going to escort these ships like we did convoys across the Atlantic in World War II, or even what Ronald Reagan did in 87 and 88, if I've got my dates correct, when we were escorting Iraqi tankers during the Iran-Iraq War. There's not that capability. I mean, the reliable things I have seen so far is that the American ships are hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from Iran.
That range, so that they're not in range, and you want to sail them into. I think that showed that the most narrow point is 33 kilometers across, which is nearly hand grenade range. You can almost throw a hand grenade that far.
And your shipping lanes are even more narrower than that, right? I mean, so
that's right.
So your shipping lanes are even tighter, and you just need to control it by fire, essentially. I mean, I don't know if they put sea mines out yet. That would certainly be a one way to go about it. the United States does have mine clearers in the Persian Gulf. Whether or not they can be defended from drone attacks or small
Well,
boat
that's
attacks.
the issue. Just like on the
Yeah.
land, when you're trying to clear minefields, you also have to have cleared the enemy fire, because the whole point is to get you into the minefield. And then once you're in the process of trying to clear it, then they attack you. So that's part of the plan, I think. And I don't know how we would get around that either.
Right.
But this
And
whole
we
thing
haven't even
about
brought up one more thing on the naval
Sure.
aspect of this, Danny. We haven't seen the Houthis enter into this yet, right? So you
Yeah.
could very well be putting the United States Navy in a position where to its rear, you have a very capable Yemeni force. I mean, we should begin this conversation always with talking about how the Houthis essentially defeated the American Navy twice in the Red Sea. Both the Biden administration and the Trump administration put naval task force in there to defeat the Houthis, and they couldn't do it. And we had to sue for a peace, basically come out with a face-saving truth to cover up our retreat from the Red Sea, not once but twice. And now we're going to put our naval forces in a position where they're to our rear. I mean, if you were playing Axis and Allies or Risk or anything like that, you wouldn't do that, you know?
Yeah, if you're playing a game, you wouldn't, much less when it's
Yeah.
actual real life. But here, but this issue of the oil has other ramifications too. Now, on the first point of it, the fact that the oil is tipping up, there's nobody on the planet that's more happy about that than Vladimir Putin, because
Right.
now that he's getting more cash, and he's going to be loving that. So he would like it to go up even more. And Dmitry Peskov comes out today on Russian media and indicates that they're putting even more pressure on Europe by saying on Wednesday, Putin recalled that the countries in the EU in a month, they plan on imposing restrictions on the purchase of Russian gas, including liquefied gas, in 2027. They want to introduce a complete ban on imports. But the president that's Putin, noted that Moscow could stop supplies right now and go to other markets. So with you have this potential restrictions on everybody's oil and gas coming out of the Middle East, Russia's going, hey, by the way, that's not the only halt that we could get. You're talking about, weaning off of our oil in a manner that's convenient to you. Well, as a matter of fact, we may stop it right now, and then you'll have an immediate cutoff. What would that do to European economic output?
Well, it would a Europe that's already reeling from no longer having that cheap, reliable Russian energy that it had for decades, going back well into the Cold War. They're already reeling from that. Thankfully, the Europeans should be grateful this is occurring as we're coming out of winter and not going into winter, of course, right? I mean, the American fossil fuel companies are happy about this. And particularly say for Europe, where the American competition for LNG comes from the Qataris, and the Qataris are now basically shut out. And so now the Americans can pick up that slack in Europe from the Qataris no longer being there. I mean, the insipidness of this and the lack of thought, any type of competency here, Danny, is just staggering across the board. But let's just bring it back to like American policy for one instance, right? You just had in the fall, or I guess, the fall, the Americans put a very heavy threat on the Indians with regard to sanctioning the Indians if they took in Russian oil. And we did see a drop in Indian import of Russian oil. Whether that would have maintained or not, we don't know. Right? Whether there'd been a workaround, they would have figured something out, the Russians, to continue to sell the oil. And they were doing that. I know it's all complicated, but we did see a drop in Indian imports of Russian oil. And so let's just say for the sake of argument, that was going to prove successful, that this was going to be a large drop, or actually India would stop bringing in Russian oil, which is a huge export target for Russia. Say for sake of argument, let's say that was going to happen. Well, now you've just completely upended that. Now, why would the Indians go along with your threats now? Why would they think that it has any value for them to comply with that as you're bringing about this energy crisis around the world? You're going to, right?
And
the
by the way,
Indians now are going to be,
This is 8 hours ago. This is today's news. And Russian oil tankers reroute to India despite U.S. tariff threats,
right,
according to Bloomberg. So it's already happening right now.
Right. And this is something that, I was able to figure out, right? They couldn't figure this out at the NSC. right? That something like this, that, this could,
I guess Rudy Giuliani was not that tied in, so you can understand.
yeah, yeah,
Yikes.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But you see there, that's part of our real problem here, is that this stuff there keeps being compounding problems everywhere you look. I mean,
Yeah.
if it was just what we're doing, if we only talked about it, and this is something I definitely wanted to mention with you here because it's a definite painful point to me, and I'm sure it is you too. The fact that it's already cost us 6 killed in action Americans that should never have died, because this was a war of choice in the worst way, and it's already caused 6 deaths that we know of anyway, and a lot of others that are seriously wounded, and it could be more, according to both President Trump and General Kane. You can count on more is coming, but the costs keep expanding out. And let me just ask you on that point, what are your thoughts on the fact that Americans have already lost their lives as a result of this folly?
Oh God, the criminality of how those men and women died in Kuwait, in a basic trailer, a triple wide trailer with no defense, passive or active, against any type of drone or missile attack. I mean, they were put out there to die, those people. Then you launch this war and and they get killed like that. That's criminal. Their entire chain of command should be in the brig or in the stockade, as you guys call it. I mean, the fact that those men and women were left out there, out in the open, as this war began, is one of just truly revolting, absolutely sickening that they died like that. There's no, and what were they doing then out there in that port facility, right? I mean, what possibly did they have to be there for? Why weren't they in a bunker? Why weren't they in a cover? But we saw throughout evidence, I think, Danny, and we know this, that the Americans launched this attack with Israelis because this was an opportunity to get Khamenei. That's the line that's out there, and that's maybe why they launched this war of choice before they were fully ready for it. But I mean, I'm just still stuck too on a video I saw on the first day of a sailor in Bahrain who was in his quarters, his apartment, basically, and videoing these drone strikes from his window, seemingly not having received any type of order, any type of alert or warning to take cover. I mean, so you have just this really macabre and grotesque experience we're witnessing of the left hand and the right hand not knowing what the one or the other is doing. So, I mean, the fact that those 6 were killed, and I understand many more were wounded when they were just in a bunker they were in a trailer under the open skies.
Not even a bunker, right?
Criminal, absolutely terrible. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the end of it, but it's also not the end of the unforced errors. Aside from going in, I think Lindsey Graham is trying to unleash something else here, we love to mock him, and we probably will, and he deserves it. But this is a potential serious here, what he's trying to unleash here. Watch this.
This is a religious war. Who wins it at the end of the day? Do the radical Islamic terrorists who want to kill all the Jews because God told them to? Who want to kill me because I'm an infidel? Who want to purify Islam, to reject moderation and make everybody a jihadist? This is a big deal. I'll deal with Section 230. So what we're facing right now is a moment of decision that will set the course of the future of the Mideast for 1,000 years.
So, I mean, aside from the absurdity of saying anything is going to change anything in 1,000 years in the Middle East, is a lunatic and doesn't understand a thing about history. But let's focus in on about that issue. He is trying to sell this to the American public and using this religious language, I think, to try and get the American people behind this so that they'll be afraid of those Muslims because they're all 9/11 terrorists, as you know. That's what he wants to do. But there are ramifications to others who are hearing this outside of the United States. I wonder if you could talk about what you think the risks to that is.
Well, I think you have the allies throughout the region who are, as we were saying, enduring these attacks. They've hosted these American bases for decades now. They have had this relationship with the U.S. that many of them thought was on a better footing or a special footing because of their relationship with Donald Trump, and in particular the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Saudis. People remember last May when Donald Trump went to visit them, the business relationships they have with the American president personally, right? Investing in his crypto business and other things. The Qataris giving him a plane. I think that they believed that they had a special relationship with this president that they've not had with other American presidents, even to the point I think they may have mistakenly thought that the president of the United States would take their call and listen to them as he listens to Benjamin Netanyahu. And of course, they were incredibly mistaken. Now they've got a population where they're, and these are monarchies that their popularity is varied. But none of them, I would say, are castles built upon anything other than sand. And you have some like Bahrain, which of course has a Shia minority that was brutally suppressed by the Bahrainis and the Saudis in 2011, as the Americans kind of helped out from the side there. I mean, you know, and so you have varying degrees of popular support for these monarchies. Again, you have this relationship that with the U.S. that is entirely one-sided. That's obvious. You see the Americans not giving you missile defense interceptors, but giving them to Israel. And as time goes by, you're going to see more and more of that prioritization. You know, and so now you have a key American leader, the John McCain of this decade, essentially, stating that this is a religious war, and that all those crazy Muslims are just going to come over here and kill them if we don't kill them first. I mean, so it adds both to the population, you know, seeing that and saying, why are we allied with these people? Why are we hosting their bases? Why do we have this relationship? To the monarchs themselves and their people around them saying, is this the best thing for us? Can we do something to lessen our involvement, our relationship with the Americans going forward? I think they're stuck now for this war, but what can we do going forward? And we've seen that shift, you know, in a number of ways. I mean, again, I think we've talked about this before, this growing relationship between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. You know, you could throw Egypt into there sometimes, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think you see this type of talking, this rhetoric, this nonsense from Lindsey Graham and many, many, many others, including a lot of Christian pastors. And I think that undermines, right? It undermines our relationships with not just the governments, but also the people and our supposed allies.
Yeah, it's not helping at all. And you mentioned there are some other crazies, and I've got a couple here to show you. You may recall this from the campaign, the 2024 campaign from Stephen Miller, who was telling you, man, don't vote for Kamala Harris. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for them sending your kids off to war. He posted this X post here. It said, to anyone still gullible enough to fall for the scummy-eyed media hoaxes, Trump said warmongering neocons love to send your kids to die for war they would never fight themselves. Liz Cheney is Kamala's top advisor. Liz wants to invade the whole Middle East. Kamala equals World War III, but Trump equals peace. That's what he said before. This is what he's saying now.
One of the reasons I fear, Sean, that some people in this country lost faith in the military and the capacity to use that military to defend us is because we had a woke Pentagon, because we had a military who at the very highest levels, not the warfighters, was forced to fight a less than full fight. What you're seeing now, Sean, is a military that is unleashed in all of its lethal prowess to go out and seek, destroy, and kill the enemy, which is what militaries are for.
You know, these guys love to use that language, kill the enemy. Pete Hegseth
Right.
just lives for that kind of stuff as he was on display at the Pentagon yesterday. But, you know, an interesting, first of all, just kind of a nitpicking here. He's talking about this woke leadership and everything that happened. All the leadership, nearly all of it, other than a handful of little individuals here and there, everybody that we're fighting with now is the same one that was there before. So if they were woke before and now suddenly they're awake just because there's a different guy in the Oval Office, I mean, that's just absurd. But that's a nitpicking thing. The much bigger issue here is that this guy is just on a bloodlust and he loves to use lethal military power. What is the concern about this? I mean, I have a lot of concerns about it, but other than just, you know, you roll your eyes because Miller says this, are there any consequences to it?
This is the type of thing that would be leading evidence in a future war crimes trial. You know, the intent to commit war crimes. When you hear Miller talk like this, more importantly, Pete Hegseth, because he's in the chain of command, as Hegseth said, I believe it was yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, no more stupid rules of engagement. He said that over and over again. And he said that specifically about this war. Again, either yesterday or the day before, he said he essentially said there's no rules of engagement. We hit
I remember
people when
that.
they're down.
I noticed that right away.
Right. I mean, so particularly coming from the Secretary of Defense, implies a policy very similar to Dick Cheney implying when we said we had to go to the dark. We as a country have to go to the dark side, and then torture followed. Right. I mean, the implications of your leaders saying this type of thing are very, very obvious. And this is the type of thing, again, that would lead off a war crimes trial, that the intent was provided by American leaders to carry out war crimes. So you have commanders who feel that the desire, the commander's intent is to kill as much as possible, to destroy.
Okay, so let me ask you on that point, since you brought that up, and you can tell me if this qualifies for that or not. But whether it's a technical war crime or not, we can debate. Maybe it is, but that reminds me of this sinking of the Iranian warship, which was invited by India to take part in an exercise unarmed, because that's part of their rules of engagement. So the thing was returning back, and it got into international waters, and then we go and to me, it's like a sucker punch, because they didn't even know that they were at risk, and they're just returning back to their country. And then all of a sudden we go in there and we do sink the ship, and then apparently violate, and you probably know this better than I do, and please explain it, is that apparently the laws of warfare at an open sea require you to render assistance to ships that have been sunk. Instead, we flow away and leave most of them to drown.
Yes, by the laws of armed conflict, as well as just the traditions of the Navy, the honor of it, you are required to rescue survivors. This is notoriously what the Japanese didn't do. I'll say the American Navy didn't do it in return to the Japanese as well, but certainly this was something that the Japanese Navy was notorious for early in its operations in World War II. I mean, so the sinking of that ship, and then the allowing men to drown is reprehensible. And we saw that some could have been saved because the Sri Lankans got out there and saved 32 of them. I mean, so the whole thing is just ugly. Whether or not it's a war crime or not, I don't know I don't know specifically in this case, because hostilities had commenced. I mean, I don't know if it would be or not.
It's interesting on that too. And I didn't have time to cut these. We may talk about it in a later show here, but American policymakers have been just falling all over themselves in the last 24 hours to say this is not a war.
Right.
It is a targeted operation, which is absurd on its own surface, because we used to mock the Russians over and over about how, it's a special military operation. No, it's a full-scale war, et cetera. And now here we're using almost the same language here. But that has potential ramifications here, because if you're claiming that you're not in a state of war with Iran, and now then you have torpedoed their warship on open seas, I mean, that could be a war crime.
I think so, particularly because you have communicated that this is a limited operation, right? And so that would imply that there's a limited area of operations involved here. And certainly a ship that was not of any type of, Gary?
Just some breaking news that Trump has fired DH Secretary Kristi Noem.
No kidding.
Oh, right.
Replacing him with Senator Mark Wayne Mullen.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God. That's what I was. Oh, my. Oh, snap.
Gary, you couldn't have just given us just the good news. You couldn't just let us have just that moment to be like, wow, he fired Noem. You had to give us like this before we could even appreciate it, Gary. You just hit us right in the gut with.
Sorry about that.
Oh man, Mark! I mean, he has just been the subject of ridicule on late night comedy shows here lately, because he was one of those who was caught saying this is not a war, it's not a war, and then they said, wait, you just said it's a war. Oh well, I misspoke. just playing loose and easy and free with words just to
Right.
hide over things that we're doing wrong. And this is the guy you're going to put in his place and her place.
Yeah, let alone his temperament. I remember a few years ago, he wanted to get up and fight the head of the Teamsters, I think it was, or the head of or UAW or somebody. Yeah, but
Did you hear
yeah,
that he was just out there saying, talking about the smell of war, and even not having ever been to combat. Did he even serve?
I don't
Don't believe so.
I don't think he did.
Smell
Yeah.
of war. Let me ask you, Matt, as one who very much knows the smell of war, is that something that you brag about?
No, it's something I never want to smell again. It's one of those things where you have an IED go off and you've got that cordite, that explosive residue in the air. I was a combat engineer, so I was on the demolition ranges all the time. Something I was used to, something I could say I enjoyed that smell. And then you're actually there, and that smell becomes infused with the sights and the sounds of one of your kids, one of your boys, both his legs gone, in pulling him out of essentially the steering wheel of the Humvee. That's what I associate with the smell of war. And I can give other examples as well. And I know you can as well. So that's my understanding of the smell of war.
Yeah, and that's the case of anybody who's actually seen combat, and not this what I consider despicable statement I've seen here. Well, we'll leave that one aside from now. But that does kind of lead us into the inaugural annual Daniel Davis Deep Dive Prize, 1984 prize in honor of the famous book 1984 by George Orwell, which, of course, where the language was completely flipped on its head, and light was called dark, good was called evil, etc. Just blatant lies, etc., that were told by the government in part of that novel there, and that was one of the general themes of the story. Well, turns out that sometimes real life is even worse. I'm going to show you here our winner, and drum roll, please. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Iran has attacked 3 of our U.S. embassies in the last couple of days. Okay, those are sovereign territories of the U.S. They have declared war on us. I don't believe in the semantics. We've talked about the language this morning. We're not at war right now. We're 4 days in to a very specific, clear mission, an Operation Epic Fury, which has 2 components, as you know, that we have articulated over and over. The president has, the Commander of Joint Chiefs, everybody has explained.
Okay, like I said, ask the crew of that ship that we sent to the bottom of the ocean and killed all those sailors. I think they would think we are at war. But what in the hell, man? When you're talking about this is not just, some clown somewhere. This is the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States government, the senior guy on the floor here. And he's saying, oh, no, we didn't attack them. In fact, they attacked us. They attacked us. Sure, we were killing all them, and they reacted and retaliated against our embassies and some of the other people, but that doesn't matter. That's the only thing you need to focus on. We're the victims here. What do you make of that?
It's, I think back to previous speakers during the wars, DeLay or Tom DeLay or John Boehner, specifically, and they were duplicitous. They were disingenuous, but they had a command of the English language that was, what you would think be requisite for the job. Here you have someone who's just throwing out this word salad. It is a war. It's not a war. They declared on war, but war on us, but we're not at a war. I mean, it just makes no sense. And the inability for someone like that, the Speaker of the House, to have such a poor grasp on what's occurring here. I think there's 2 things. One, I think it's Mike Johnson's own degree of ignorance in all of this. But also, too, I think it has a lot to do with this administration. I mean, this was a war of choice that they launched without even having their messaging put together. First of all, they launched this war and only 1 in 4 Americans support it, which is insane. But then they can't even have their messaging together. I mean, you've seen this comedy routine. Or every day, every several hours, somebody else gives another justification or another reason or another objective for this war. I mean, you saw this week when they were briefing members of the Senate, one Republican senator after another coming out and explaining what he heard. And it was like a game of telephone. They all heard something different. And then today, I mean, this is happening every day. And just today, before we came on, I saw where Pete Hegseth this morning have been adamant that this is not regime change. And then Donald Trump telling Axios today, I should be the one who picks Iran's next leader. I mean, it's just so, in some sense, yes, I do put a lot on the speaker not being the person for the job. But I also have to give him some degree here in the sense of the information he's getting is all over the place. But he should be, if he's a Speaker of the House, he should be able to manage that and not put out something like that regarding war.
You're
right?
much
I mean,
more
this isn't a
forgiving than
minor
I
issue.
am, I'll
This is
say.
war.
Because I give him no credibility whatsoever and no agency at all in terms of what his failures were. But listen, we're going to have to wrap it up here. Really, well, there's that one there about him picking the next Ayatollah. I just have no words for this. I don't know what he could be thinking of. But anyway, thanks so much for coming on today, because we always just so value your views so much, especially on somebody who has been into combat and understands the realities of it and the implications for the one that we're in right now. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. And we appreciate you being here for our inaugural 1984 Peace Prize.
Absolutely. Congratulations to the winner. And thank you, Danny. I appreciate what you and Gary are doing. It's really important right now.
And we appreciate that. And by the way, we got another one just in 5 minutes from now coming up. Listen to that. Ted Postal. Do not miss this one, folks. This one is incredible because you are going to get penetrated through all of the smoke and mirrors and the absurd claims on TV to find out what is the real story, good or bad, what the real story is on the air defense interceptor missiles in this missile war right now. Tune in just a few minutes on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. I don't try to talk you into buying gold or tell you how to run your stock portfolio, but there is a way you can help us. Subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with somebody you love.